Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Crane, and I'm the Program Director for the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship. And you are listening to a Global Industry Spotlight, a conversational series focused on providing resources and insight for the creative entrepreneur. We are here to connect with you, network, discuss business, and all things creative entrepreneurship. We are streaming live out of the Comcast Business Startup Studio, a room designed for Chicago's small business community, located at 2112, Chicago's first music, film, and tech incubator. The Global Industry Spotlight today is on Kennita Hickman, founder of Catera, a media production company that connects creatives with businesses through live event production, brand campaigns, and content creation. Kennita is an award-winning music entrepreneur, urban cultural micro-influencer, writer, content producer, and executive producer. Her 23-year career has spanned writing, public relations, voiceover talent, event production, and artist management. Artists managed include The Cranberry Show, Tapebenders, and B ALXNDR. Prior to her work at Catera, she wrote for various music publications, including Urbanology, Relevant, and The Source. She currently serves on I Voted Board and Milwaukee Theater Alliance. Previous board work includes Above the Clouds, faith-based art and youth organization, Wisconsin area music industry, and Repairs of the Breach. She is also Radio Milwaukee's 2021 Milwaukee Music Ambassador of the Year and WAMI's 2013 President's Award recipient. We are really excited to have Kennita today.
Thank you.
We were enjoying the lo-fi music. It's great to have you here from Milwaukee. I appreciate you making the trip down. And you know, we had a meeting, I think maybe a couple weeks ago or a month ago, a couple months ago. Time is a very strange thing these days.
Yes.
But I just, I had Emily White on the podcast recently. It's interesting to learn about some of the work that's happening in Milwaukee. But if you could talk a little bit about kind of your career and just kind of the beginnings of it that has led you up to where you are now, like a little highlight reel of some of the things that that you've built.
Yeah. So I actually started off writing for a teen publication that was a national publication that was based out of Milwaukee. So I had my first byline around 14, 15. The goal for me was really to be the Black lady Carson Daly.
Okay.
And so, I knew that he had a radio show at that time. He was obviously heavy on MTV. Right. So I know a lot of folks watching now know him from the Today Show, right, from The Voice, but back then,
our era.
He was on MTV, and I wanted to eventually become a VJ. And so I was writing throughout high school, securing bylines in different publications. That led to interning and then working in radio. So engineering, being behind the boards, but also voiceover work and hosting my own radio show. And then back into writing. And when I started covering national artists, I remember getting Kanye West's first press kit and the Dropout Bear being on the cover of the folder,
right?
And then all of his press materials inside. And I recognized that a lot of the artists in Milwaukee had no idea how to put a press kit together, especially our Black artists. And so I started doing press kits for free because at that point I was writing for various publications. And I wanted to be able to pitch Milwaukee artists. Yeah. And so from there, somehow I got into artist management and event production. And that kind of brings me here. I think, coming out of high school, I wanted to own a production company. And even then, I wasn't really sure what that meant. I didn't go to an art school. I went to Rufus King High School for the International Baccalaureate. So, for those folks watching, General's in the building. And so I had to get involved in journalism outside of school because we didn't necessarily have a strong journalism program. So now being 38, owning a production company of sorts, producing my travel series, Artist Eats, where I interview independent musicians at local restaurants. I support organizations and businesses by building out influencer projects that connects independent artists. So it really leverages the celebrity of independent artists to do this local advocacy work.
Mm-hmm.
We often hear in politics that it's all local, right?
Right.
I think advocacy work also always local.
I want to stop you there.
Yeah.
Break that down a little bit of how that looks.
Yeah, for sure. So I will pitch to a corporation or a business who's working on a project. So let's say, one of my previous clients, they needed to increase education around blood and organ donation, especially in Black and Brown communities.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was able to come in and build out their influencer project, find the artist, build out those talking points, build out the content, and really serve as the liaison between the organization and the artists, but also build out what that content should look like, help them host their own blood drive. And so really just A to Z for the company. When a company brings me on, I come on with my team to build out the project and lead it, so they don't have to think about anything. Because often what the real ask is we have this cool idea, but none of us have the capacity to do it.
Right.
So I'm really being brought on to be that extra support. And so they need the comfort to know that I have it taken care of. Often, too, a lot of these organizations don't have access to artists. They don't know how to find them. And, I've been working with artists for over 20 years now. You can put me in any city and I can find where the artists are, and a lot of it is research.
Right.
So I know what type of searches to do to find artists. And so that's what it looks like. And I think that it's such an amazing opportunity at the local level. I think we often think about, so what comes to mind is Cardi B and Offset's Valentine's Day meal that they're doing with McDonald's. That's a promotion that they have right
Mm-hmm.
now. And obviously that makes sense. They're global influencers,
Right.
global brands, but you don't need Cardi B to do an influencer project at the local level.
Right.
And you don't need the budget for that. You could be the Humane Society and get a couple artists who are like, we love animals and we want to support you, and build out a project for that. And have a way to monitor the data, because you also want to make sure that it's effective and have a goal. And so I'm often helping these companies determine, what is the goal? Do you want to increase your shared followers? Do you, how do you build engagement? Because I think with influencer projects too, since we're doing a deep dive, is that it's also about how that company engages with the artist. People these days, especially post-pandemic, we're looking to build relationships with authentic brands. So if you're a company that's not engaging with the artist online, that looks transactional versus relational. And so maybe I don't want to be engaged with your company. And
I like the idea of it being on a local level,
as
a way to kind of support local ecosystems. I mean, I think something like this is even needed in a place like Chicago, right? Where there's a lot of different pockets of neighborhoods and pockets of artists, but there's not a lot of conversations of how do we support and collaborate with local businesses to support them, and then they also support the artist. And even, at a kind of local, like mid-range career level for artists, I think it can be a really good look.
Yeah. And it's an opportunity to build in another revenue stream.
Right.
So when I come on board, it's always, do you have a budget to pay the artist? And what is that budget? Whether it's per post or whether it's a stipend. I think it's important that we start to think about the creative economy and also get away from this idea of starving artists. Like, it's not cute anymore.
Right.
Artists shouldn't starve. Artists deserve to get paid because artists have bills. And so how do we pay artists? Because ultimately what you're asking the artists to do is leverage their fan base to talk about your work.
Right.
That is work, and they should be paid for that. And most of the organizations that I work for, they understand that, and it's not a problem. So I'm happy that I'm able to put money into artists' pockets through the work that I do.
And working with artists for the last 20 years and being involved in the music industry, and what have you noticed? What has changed? What has stayed the same? I like you shaking your head.
Because, I'm sorry, I did not realize I was doing that on camera.
You're like, it's the same. Everyone's the same.
It's the same. I think for your Chicago audience who's listening, for the audience that's watching on LinkedIn, Milwaukee is one of the most segregated cities in the country. And when you come to Milwaukee, you certainly feel that and you see that. And you see it across industries, including our arts industry. And so for me, one of the biggest changes is the venues that are willing to book hip hop shows. Our venues change every few years, right? And there's still venues that hip hop performances are not allowed in. And we just know that we can't book artists there, right? I think from a funding perspective, there aren't enough funders who understand the importance of funding all arts. And so muralists and visual artists get funding.
Yeah, absolutely.
They have to be connected have to have a fiscal agent or receiver, or be connected to a nonprofit. So it's a mural project for a community center.
Right.
But if you're an artist who's written a book and you like to go on tour, if you're a musician who would like to go on tour, a local theater group who needs marketing and PR support, there's no funding end for you for that. And so if you don't build up enough of a following on Instagram, which is harder post-pandemic, right? And so I think that in terms of the pathways to get money to continue to do art, I also think the recognition that we should be paying our artists the standard rate for the work that they do. I think those conversations are still not loud enough, and not enough change is being brought to put better practices to support our artists. There's an artist back home in Milwaukee named Rosie Petrie, and I love quoting her because I'm paraphrasing it, but she essentially said, if you don't think local arts is important, you should consider how you spent your pandemic. Because essentially all of us engaged in art during the pandemic. That's all we had. All we had was music, Instagram. We were watching verses on Instagram Live. This actually started off on Instagram
absolutely.
Live, you know what I'm saying? So we were all engaged in some level of art. And so if you don't think local arts matter and local artists should be paid, you should consider that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many, in what you just said, there's so many levels.
Mm-hmm.
So taking it back to segregation,
Yeah.
right? Chicago's a very segregated city. Milwaukee's a segregated city. And there's absolutely still issues about having hip hop shows, right? There's this assumption of there's a certain crowd, there's a certain thing.
Yes.
We don't want that here. And being able to, break those barriers and have those clubs be everywhere. It's interesting to me, and I find this in my own work of event production, how hip hop is the most popular genre in the world and has been for a long time, but it is basically for a lot of venues, educational, it's like the last one to come, right? Even though it's been around now for 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a new genre.
Right.
And I think it's important that cities, venues, people educate each other and support and be able to create platforms for performance. I mean, it's the same here. I mean, it's a very similar situation here as it is in Milwaukee. So I think,
I want to add,
yeah.
I think that, and this may be a lot for the LinkedIn audience. It's early, but I also think we have to recognize that sometimes that is coded language.
Oh yeah.
Right. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, people don't mean hip hop.
Right.
They mean something else.
Urban. Right. We don't do urban. Right.
But people don't mean urban.
Right.
They mean another word.
Right.
Right. And it's okay to say that, because I think then we get to the root of the problem. And oftentimes it is either race and or socioeconomics, right? That is the root of, well, why doesn't this exist? And how do we get this? It's money, it's where you live, and oftentimes race is connected with that. And so I think for me, recognizing that systems work is hard. So what can I do within my sphere of influence, right? I can build out some influencer projects, and I can help some artists put some money in their pocket.
Right.
It don't solve everything, right? But it allows an artist to have a voice off stage. And I think that's really important for our artist community too, where you're not just a painter and you're not just a rapper. Like, you have interests that you're already talking about on social media beyond the art. How can I connect you to opportunities where you can do that and make a little bit of money?
Yeah. System work is very hard.
Mm-hmm.
I smile because my wife works for the American Medical Association and the Center for Health Equity. And it's that system work, right? And how difficult it is to change all of these things that have been in place for a long time,
Yes.
that have benefited one type of person. And it's it's really important work, and we see it in all industries.
Yes. Yes.
So, and I always think about the fact that when I talk to, Black artists from the South Side, West Side, wherever in the city, a big issue is access to capital,
Yeah.
access to money. We don't need workshops. We don't need this. We need cash.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to get a business bank loan, to be able to, not basically survive off of credit. Some of these barriers, I think, are really important, and something that here, at the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship, we're actively trying to address, right? Are you forming your business? Are you setting up correctly? Can you get a business credit card? What does this mean for bank loans? To be able to build a team, right? I think these are really important aspects when becoming an artist.
And I think, too, talking about other types of revenue coming in, right? And so, what's happening in the VC space?
Mm-hmm.
Who are these philanthropic foundations? Corporations, Target, they have a foundation. Like, how do we plug into that, right? And while I know a lot of artists are like, don't give me another workshop. It's like, yeah, okay, maybe not another branding workshop, but can we do a workshop where we show you how to write a proposal?
Yeah.
Because
a grant proposal.
Because in order to get access to this big money,
right,
you gotta talk big money talk.
Right.
You gotta know the big money language.
Yeah.
And a lot of us don't know that. That is information that is very much so been gate kept. And so, yes, go to the banks, go to those places, sign up. A lot of these banks now are starting to do programming for Black businesses and Black creatives where you can apply for loans and all of that, but also understand how the money flows in your city, right? You have corporations, period, that aren't foundations or don't have a foundation that have access to capital too, right? And so I think it's thinking about how do we build up artists to be able to make those things happen, and how do we build them up to know who to talk to. I think for me, so in January, I pitched to 450 people in 16 different cities. That's all I did. And I created a blueprint of who do I talk to in Milwaukee and how do I find those people in these other 15 cities. And that is all I talked to. It was media organizations, it was bids, it was co-working spaces. And so I would also encourage folks listening to kind of blueprint who you need if you wanted to be plopped down in a new city. I would encourage you to take some time to think about how the money flows into your cities. And so as you're meeting these people, as I was meeting these people at news organizations, I was asking, how do you acquire new content, right? Who's paying for that? Where's that money coming from? You have to be able to ask those next level questions so that you can build that next level plan for yourself.
Yeah. I was a full-time musician for 12 years. And then I was curated festivals and events at Navy Pier, like arts and culture.
That's dope.
And I didn't realize when I went to Navy Pier the amount of foundation money for artists. It was shocking, to be honest. I was like, oh, there is money. And then it takes and I think you're just bringing up so many great points. It takes time to learn the language. You have to tell the story. What is it that they want to hear? Who are the right people to talk to, right? Who are the program officers who are invested? Who are the ones that you don't need to talk to? And then now being here at 2112, which is more on the business side, it's also another language, right? There's like the foundation language. There's the business language. Yeah. All of these things need people like you to help artists navigate and brands navigate, right? It's like how are they interacting with artists?
Yeah, because the Comcast language, right, is going to be very different from, I think you guys have the Joyce Foundation here.
The Joyce Foundation is in Chicago, yeah.
Yeah, so like that language is going to be different. Yeah, for sure. And I think, and now I'm about to blow your mind. I'm about to blow your mind because a lot of the people that I talk to who I never would have had access to before, I found on LinkedIn.
Right.
Once I created the blueprint of who I needed at PBS. And once I knew like, oh, I'm talking to the person at PBS, but I'm talking to the person who does development of unscripted shows, or I'm talking to the VP of programming. Once you kind of start understanding that, that's just a search away on LinkedIn. So is this my camera? This one right here?
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of y'all on Instagram, right? But I'm about to spill some tea. Let's say you're a musician and you want to perform at Rolling Loud, right? You could go on Instagram and you'll type in Rolling Loud. You're going to talk to the intern or the social media person who's managing that DM. You go on LinkedIn, you will find a producer, you will find a booking event, you will find previous board members, you will find previous employees. Anybody who has Rolling Loud in their resume or bio are going to come up. And I'm telling you, 7 times out of 10, they will respond to your DM, even if it's, I cannot help you.
Yeah, that's it.
Get on LinkedIn, get a good headshot, because people do not talk to people who don't have a headshot because you're a weirdo. So do that.
Yeah.
Get a bio, have one of your homies write up something real sweet for a little bit. You don't have to be married to it. You just got to do it. And you should be on LinkedIn building up your profile. Absolutely. 1,000,000%.
It's a great point. And there's a good friend of mine who I'm actually going to reach out to who's not on LinkedIn. And they're trying to build a lot of things, and they're very successful. And I'm like, you need to get your LinkedIn presence, because it has been a great way for me to network, to stay in touch with people. Yes. Even the fact that they have the QR code that you can just, when you meet somebody, hey, let me just scan your code and add you on LinkedIn. And I like that it most of the time keeps a lot of the noise out.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a big struggle for LinkedIn to hold that true, where it's not going to become very noisy like all social media spaces kind of eventually become, which is not enjoyable at some point. These are really great points of finding the people. Where are the people that can help make those decisions? I wanted to ask what you will not compromise on in your work.
I will not compromise. I will say it is 2 things. I will not compromise my safety, and I will not compromise my joy. And when I say safety, something happened to me during the pandemic where I think I recognized my space as a Black woman. And I recognized what it felt like to feel unsafe at a table, right? Prior to the pandemic, it didn't even occur to me, right? I know it was happening before the pandemic, but it didn't hit the same way, because anytime I entered a traditional job, I knew I was there from 8 to 5, 8 to 6, whatever. And then the evenings was for my company that I was building. So I didn't care what people were talking about from 8 to 6. I show up, I do my job, I do it well. But one day this is going to be the thing. During the pandemic, I was separated from my support system, my friends, my family. And so the weight of the microaggressions and passive aggressions and being overtalked at meetings, all of those things just hit in a different way. And I started to kind of imagine for myself, what would it mean to feel safe in the workplace, to feel safe to share my ideas, and even if it's a dumb idea, to feel at least safe enough to share. And to know that it will be supported. And so I will not compromise my safety. I will not compromise that. And I won't compromise my joy. I think the work that I do is one of the ways that I contribute to service to the world. And I think all of us should view our work as how we serve the world and humans while we're here. And so that's such a blessing to be able to get to do. That's something that, my mother worked for an organization for 35 years, and she did not find joy in her work. My grandparents, that's something that they weren't able to do, to find joy in their work. And so I think it's such a blessing for me to find joy and to hold on to that. So joy and safety, I won't compromise.
Yeah. I mean, I almost want a moment of silence for that, because it's powerful. It's really powerful that you'd say that, and that's being able to acknowledge that and be like, no, this is what I want for my life.
Yeah. Because we're not worker bees, you know.
No.
And I think for me, prior to the pandemic, I was a workaholic. I was so heavy into grind and hustle culture because I mean, really, that's American culture, right? Like we can talk about like, you know, capitalistic culture. We can talk about slave culture as a Black woman, right? Like it's deeply embedded in what we do. But the reality is, being embedded in grind and hustle culture did not help me start my business any sooner. Right? I really put in my 2-week notice at my job with like a couple $100 in my account, and it was like a leap of faith with God to just see what would happen. And so like, but in the process, I missed out on my niece and nephew's school plays. I missed out on Friendsgivings. I purposely didn't go because I would work. And interestingly enough, there was a Friendsgiving November 2019. I decided not to go. I remember being in my co-working space, texting her saying, I'll catch you next year. Mm-hmm. And next year, of course, was the pandemic.
Right.
And I said I would never do that again. I would never forsake making time for my friends and my loved ones ever again for the sake of work, because it didn't get me further ahead.
And I am the same way at this point. I think the pandemic really put that into focus. Like the time that I am able to spend with my family and friends is the most special time.
Yeah.
I mean, work is very important and I love and I'm grateful for it. But that time, like, right, it's like the idea of time really changed post-pandemic. Like if you are taking my time is my most valuable asset. Yeah. I mean, and it really, like, I think focused on that, you know, brought that to light, I would say. And it's been an interesting shift, even people coming to events after work. I mean, you really have to program something that's special and unique and yes. less frequent yes. to get people out of their homes or away from their families or, you know, away from their normal routine, which has been an interesting challenge for us in terms of what people are interested in and, yeah. you know, what they would love to come and see. So I have two more questions for you. So you just talked a little bit about the leap of faith into being an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about 3 things, or there could be 4 things or 2 things or whatever, that you would suggest to someone who, let's say, is in the music industry, wants to become a manager or is interested in getting involved in the business and wants to own their own business? What would be your advice to them?
First and foremost, find people who are working at the level that you'd aspire to work at, and take them out to coffee. You want to ask as many questions as possible. What things did they learn? What are some pitfalls that they experienced? You just want to learn as much as possible. And so for me, I've always found people in the city of Milwaukee who were kind of operating at a level that I aspired to do. The other thing I would say is absolutely follow your dream. Your dream is your dream. The universe, God, whoever you subscribe to, they've given that gift to you. And so other people don't have to believe it. You have to believe it. And you have to find a support system of folks to keep propelling you forward, because entrepreneurship is really insular work. It's very lonely. At the end of the day, if you don't send out those emails, no one's sending them out for you. No one could send out those 450 pitch emails for me. And nobody could then meet with the 30, 40 people that I met with as a result, right? That was all on me. Mm-hmm. And so you got to be committed to that. You got to be committed to long hours, different hours. Those would be, and I guess the final piece would be, and follow your joy. Because for me, when I started out doing this work, now none of the people I started out with are even in this industry anymore. Mm-hmm. I've been able to go from artist manager to director at an arts organization to now working for myself. And it's just because I continued to follow the joy in it.
Well, those are great suggestions. And I just want to do a quick shout out to Milwaukee.
Yeah.
My exposure to Milwaukee was I went to Lawrence University in Appleton, Wisconsin.
Oh, the Music University.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, College Avenue.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So, and a lot of, first of all, I was blown away by the musical talent of Milwaukee residents.
Yeah.
Like there was the School of Arts or High School of Arts.
High School of Arts, yeah.
They came up to perform at Lawrence, and these are all like college conservatory kids.
Mm-hmm.
And these high school kids smoked all of them. They were just like on another level. I mean, it's like you walked in, you were like, who are like, are these like from another college? No, they were high school kids from Milwaukee who were extraordinary musicians.
Yeah, my sister actually went to the School of Art. She was a dance major.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and then a couple of friends who went to Lawrence were from the Milwaukee scene. And I've always been impressed in, it's awesome that the Midwest has these smaller cities that have just these like incredible talent. Like Cincinnati's another one of them, where there's a lot of musicians who are extraordinary. Milwaukee. So, shout out to Milwaukee and all the people that make the culture amazing. I mean,
Milwaukee is a really cool place. I'll say there's pockets of coolness, but I love Milwaukee. I love what it represents, and I hope to see it grow to its full potential.
Yeah, absolutely. So to end the conversation today, what you have a book, a movie, a song, a podcast, something that you inspires your personal life or inspires your business, entrepreneurial life. It could be one thing, it could be two things, anything for the audience today.
I'm a millennial, and so I obviously listen to like a significant amount of rap music that really has nothing to do with entrepreneurship, but like it kind of fuels me. I'm trying to think of one song. I think one song that I always kind of go back to is Nipsey Hussle's "Grinding All My Life."
Yeah.
That is, I actually have it's called Money Motivation Playlist, and Nipsey Hussle's at the top. And so when I need inspiration, I go to my Money Motivation, and it reminds me that I've been grinding all my life. Like, I'm gonna get there, I'm gonna make it happen.
Yeah, I think also just hip hop in itself is just been incredibly entrepreneurial. Like,
yeah,
these people had to smash doors down to make their own industry and to build careers. And yeah, Nipsey Hussle's his music is very motivated, and I think hip hop music in general is incredibly empowering.
Yes.
And has been from the beginning.
And I'll say for me, it's being able to cover Milwaukee hip hop artists, but also major hip hop artists, for different publications has been life-changing for me. So hip hop has given me a lot as well. So
thank you so much for being here today. It's great to meet you in person.
Yes.
I feel your energy. I really appreciate that. I'm just going to put below everyone Kennita's name and then where you can find her on Instagram, her company, Catera. I think there are people like you who are supporting artists and opening doors, and it's important work. And so we're grateful for that as an artist. And, I'm grateful to meet people like you. I think it's important work of how we improve the ecosystem, how we open doors and make things more accessible for people. We can't solve the world, but also how we get people paid. Very important, very important thing. Again, my name is Daniel Crane. I'm the program director for the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship, and you have been listening to an amazing global industry spotlight with Kennita Hickman from Milwaukee. Join us next week, but we'll have another. Actually, don't join us next week. Next week we'll be in South by Southwest. So in 2 weeks, we'll have another guest talking about business, entrepreneurship, tech. It's been great again to have you. We will stay in touch. And that's it. Take care.
Thank you.